Welcome back to Developing Jamaica. In today's video, we're breaking down the results of Jamaica's 2025 general election, what happened, how it compares with past elections, and most importantly, what this means for Jamaica's future. Let's dive in. The Jamaican general election was held on September 3, 2025, and it turned out to be one of the closest races we've seen in years. The two main contenders were familiar faces, the Jamaica Labour Party, or JLP, led by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, and the People's National Party, or PNP, led by opposition leader Mark Golding. Both parties hit the campaign trail with bold promises focused on wages, taxes, and reducing the cost of living. When the votes were counted, the JLP managed to secure 35 seats in the 63-seat House of Representatives, while the PNP won 28 seats. That gives the JLP just enough to hold on to government, meaning Holness now leads Jamaica into a historic third consecutive term as Prime Minister. But here's what's important: this victory wasn't a landslide. In fact, it marks a significant shift in power. Back in 2020, the JLP completely dominated with 49 seats, leaving the PNP with just 14. Fast forward 5 years, and that gap has narrowed dramatically. The PNP gained 14 seats, while the JLP lost the same number. Looking at the popular vote, the two parties were separated by less than 2 percentage points, JLP at around 50.5% and the PNP just behind at 49.2%. That razor-thin margin shows just how divided the electorate is right now. Another number that stood out this year was voter turnout. Only about 39% of eligible Jamaicans cast their ballots. That means more than half of the population stayed home on election day. Low turnout has been a trend in recent elections, but the fact that such a tight contest didn't draw more people to the polls is raising questions about voter apathy and trust in the political system. So while the JLP came out on top, the story of the 2025 election is not just about who won, it's about how much ground the PNP regained, how narrow the victory was, and what those low turnout numbers might be saying about the mood of the country. To really understand the 2025 results, we need to put them side by side with what happened in past elections, especially 2020. In 2020, the JLP achieved one of the most decisive victories in modern Jamaican politics. They won 49 seats, while the PNP was left with only 14. The JLP also secured about 57% of the popular vote, compared to the PNP's 42%. That gave Holness not just a majority, but a commanding one, allowing him to push through policies with relatively little resistance in Parliament. Fast forward to 2025, and the picture looks very different. The JLP dropped to 35 seats, losing 14 members of Parliament, while the PNP gained exactly 14. This swing is significant. It shows a major shift in public mood, even though the JLP technically stayed in power. The popular vote tells a similar story. The JLP went from a comfortable lead of nearly 15 percentage points in 2020, down to less than 1.5 points in 2025. That's a huge narrowing of the gap in just one election cycle. Voter turnout is another important factor. In 2020, turnout was already low, partly due to the pandemic, with just under 38% of eligible voters participating. Many expected a post-pandemic rebound in 2025, but the turnout was only slightly better, hovering around 39%. For context, in earlier decades Jamaican elections often drew turnout above 60%. That steady decline raises questions about how much faith people have in the political process. And it's not just the numbers that are different. The campaign issues shifted as well. In 2020, the JLP was seen as handling the economy and the pandemic response more effectively, which boosted their popularity. By 2025, the focus was on the rising cost of living, unemployment, wages, and concerns about inequality. Those everyday bread and butter issues gave the PNP a chance to reconnect with voters who had turned away from them 5 years earlier. So when we compare 2020 to 2025, the biggest takeaway is this: while the JLP is still in government, the balance of power is starting to even out. Jamaica went from a one-sided landslide to a closely contested election, and that shift will shape how politics plays out over the next 5 years. So, why do these results matter? It's not just about who sits in Gordon House, it's about what this new balance of power means for Jamaica's future. First, the JLP's reduced majority. In politics, numbers matter. Going from 49 seats down to 35 means the government has much less breathing room. In 2020, the JLP could pass legislation with ease. Now, every vote in Parliament will be more closely contested, and any internal disagreements could make it harder for the government to move its agenda forward. Second, the resurgence of the PNP. For years, many critics said the opposition lacked energy and vision. But in 2025, they managed to rally support with promises of easing the financial burden on working Jamaicans, like raising the income tax threshold and eliminating taxes on tips and overtime. Even though they didn't win, gaining 14 seats shows that the PNP is rebuilding its base and could be positioning itself as a serious contender for the next election. Third, policy direction. Both parties put wages and taxes at the center of their campaigns. The JLP promised to double the minimum wage, which, if delivered, could provide real relief for lower-income workers. The PNP, meanwhile, emphasized tax breaks that would put more money back into people's pockets. With such a close race, the government will likely face stronger public pressure to deliver quickly, because voters now know there's an alternative waiting in the wings. Fourth, the message from voters. The low turnout combined with the tight margin sends a warning signal. Many Jamaicans may feel disconnected from the political process, but those who did show up made it clear, the days of one-sided victories are over. If the government fails to address crime, unemployment, and the high cost of living, the PNP could gain even more ground in the years ahead. And finally, this matters for stability and governance. A slimmer majority often means more debate, more scrutiny, and sometimes more compromise. Depending on how it's managed, that could either slow down progress or lead to better, more balanced decision-making. So, the bottom line is this: the JLP may still be in power, but the political landscape in Jamaica has shifted. The opposition is stronger, the government is under more pressure, and Jamaicans will be watching closely to see if promises turn into action. Andrew Holness and the JLP have secured a third term, but it's their weakest yet. The PNP made real gains, and the narrow vote margin means Jamaica is entering a more competitive political era. The big question now is, can the government deliver on wages, crime reduction, and constitutional reform with a slimmer mandate? That's the story of Jamaica's 2025 election, and here on Developing Jamaica we'll keep following how these results shape the island's future. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, share the video, and subscribe so you don't miss our deep dives into Jamaica's politics, economy, and development. Thanks for watching.